it's a campaign promise that's come true. And a lot of people would think that it's a campaign promise that was based around when Trump was elected. Trump was the final facilitator of it, but in all actuality, it was a campaign promise that was made by Ronald Reagan back in the 80s. Conservatives and all that, they've always wanted to challenge it. Roe versus Wade, I believe, was passed in 73. So when Reagan got in office, they were under the assumption that he was going to do kind of what Trump did which was pass conservative judges that were ultimately going to allow the challenge of Roe versus Wade. Instead, he didn't. He did put in a conservative judge, but that conservative judge did not vote to overturn Roe versus Wade and some other policies along with immigration and things of that nature, which kind of pissed off the conservative party because they were mad because they felt like that promise was broken to them, the challenge of Roe versus Wade and immigration. So here we come 20, 30, 40 years later with Trump. This is why I keep telling people, like, if you look at the last two most popular conservative presidents, it's Reagan and Trump. And what do they both have in common? They both were liberals at one point. Reagan was a California governor who was a Democrat, and then he flipped to becoming conservative, I believe. Trump was always a liberal. He's probably put in more money in the Clinton campaign than he's put in his own campaign. The two most popular, quote-unquote, conservative presidents were actually former liberals. So when Trump got in, all he did was follow through on the campaign promise of Reagan. Ever since the Patriot Act, ever since 9/11, where they've allowed us to be spied on, it's now about, okay, how much government control can we really get now? And so first it was, the Patriot Act, then it's COVID. Okay, we're going to mandate that you have to get the vaccine, which, mind you, now that's fine, for safety and all that, we get that. But once again, this is a government control thing. And now, since we've, seen that COVID was allowed and they basically mandated and kept people out of, restaurants and everything else, let's see what else. Can we now go at Roe versus Wade? Can we now challenge this? Can the government now control something else? In my opinion, as you're fighting over women's rights, as you're fighting over social justice, as you're fighting over, all these other, social things, which are important things, you're not really necessarily the average, in particular American, but really the average citizen across the world, because it's going across the world, is not paying attention to how the rich are getting richer, getting more tax breaks, how the rich are expanding, during COVID, their fortunes expanded 12 times the amount, while, the average person lost, pretty much damn near 12 times, if not half of their money. So people are not paying attention to these things economically. I mean, you do understand that your pocketbook is probably a little shorter or whatever, but you're not understanding the long-term effect because you're so worried about just fighting for your basic rights. Freedom has to be fought for. There's no such thing as free. Everything has to be fought for. This is also a wake-up call, like you said, for voting rights, for criminal justice reform. With restriction comes an understanding of what you have to fight for. And we're reliving the 60s, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. We're reliving it right here, right now.